everybody. Today, we're going to be covering some Elden Ring lore. We're going to be discussing the lore of the major bosses throughout the game. I'm going to be reading the relevant item descriptions. So, for every boss that has armor, weapons, spells, whatever you get from their remembrances, all the kind of immediate items related to that boss I will be reading. So, we're going to start with the handful of non-remembrance bosses that you can get items from Enia, the finger reader crone, where you can, buy their armor. And once we finish up those, we're going to go to the remembrance bosses throughout the game. And then we'll hit on the DLC bosses. So let's jump in, starting with Commander Niall. Veteran's prosthesis. Bladed prosthetic leg enwreathed with the power of lightning. Instead, attached to the fist. Commander Niall, veteran of Castle Sol, offered this prosthesis in exchange for the lives of defeated knights held prisoner. He went on to lead these men as an army of no nation. Veteran's Helm. An old helm that has seen many battles, worn by Niall, the great veteran general of Sol. Niall was a lone survivor who commanded spirits to defend his long-past master. This aging general could not die, nor did he have anywhere to fade away. Elamir of the Briar. Murray's Executioner's Sword. Storied sword of House Murray's, the family of executioners who presided over the Shaded Castle. One of the legendary armaments. Elamir of the Briar, the bell-bearing hunter, snatched the sword from the site of his looming execution and furnished it with battle skills from his home of Eoked. Briar Greatshield. Greatshield from a foreign land, used by Elamir of the Briar. Attacks with this armament utilize the iron thorns that have been wound around its frame. Originates from Eoked, a land of proudly solitary ascetics. Briar Helm. Battered iron helm from a foreign land, worn by Elamir of the Briar. The winding, rusted iron briars are the mark of the guilty and typically indicate a sentence of death. They also cause this armor to deal damage when performing dodge rolls. Elamir murdered numerous instructors and merchants, and was known as the bell-bearing hunter. Loretta, Knight of the Halictree. Royal Knight Helm. Silver Helm of Loretta, a knight who served Miquella's Halictree. Loretta, once a royal Carrion knight, went on a journey in search of a haven for Albinaurics, and determined that the Halictree was their best chance for eventual salvation. Royal Knight Armor. Silver Armor of Loretta, a knight who served Miquella's Halictree. Loretta was once a royal Carrion knight, and her lapis lazuli blue cape is the emblem of the knightly pride that continues to guide her. Loretta's War Sickle. Intricately crafted silver war sickle, wielded by Loretta, Knight of the Haddock Tree. Originally given for service as a personal guard to Carrion royalty, the weapon's blue glintstone has been replaced with unalloyed gold. Loretta's Great Bow. Sorcery used by Royal Knight Loretta. Creates a magic great bow and fires a great arrow. Charging enhances potency. Hold to keep the great arrow knocked. It is said that the bow was Loretta's favored weapon. Loretta's Mastery. Sorcery used by Loretta, Knight of the Haddock Tree. Creates a magic great bow and fires 4 great arrows simultaneously. Charging enhances potency. Hold to keep the great arrows knocked. Developed by Loretta after her long, bloody journey to seek out a place where the Albinorics could live in peace. Silver Mirror Shield. Shield of radiant silver, festooned with amber and carried by Loretta, Knight of the Haddock Tree. The shape is said to imitate that of a sacred drop of dew, which inspired the absurd rumor that Loretta herself was an Albinoric. And we're now on to the Remembrance Bosses. And we'll start with Godric the Grafted. Remembrance of the Grafted. Remembrance of Godric the Grafted, hewn into the Erd Tree. The power of its namesake can be unlocked by the finger reader. Alternatively, it can be used to gain a great bounty of runes. A feeble man sought power through the grotesque act of grafting. One day we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays of gold. And, by the way, all of the remembrances include that line that goes, "The power of its namesake can be unlocked by the finger reader. Alternatively, it can be used to gain a great bounty of runes." And I'm sure we'd both go a little nuts if I read that same line like 20 times in this video, so I'll skip it from now on in all of the remembrance items that I read. Also, when I read boss descriptions, descriptions of boss armor sets, there are repetitive lines in most of the armor set items. They pretty much read the same, except they'll swap out, the word boots for the word gauntlets. So, for those items, I'm just going to read unique armor descriptions and not repeat, items that pretty much just repeat everything that I said from a previous item. Alright. Back to Godric. Axe of Godric. Great axe wielded by Godric the Grafted. This golden battle axe is emblazoned with the figure of a beast, representing the strength of Godfrey, first Elden Lord, and patriarch of the golden lineage. I command thee kneel, for I am the Lord of all that is golden. Grafted Dragon. The embodiment of the power that still remained in the dragon's head that was grafted to Godric's left arm. The wielder's arm will take the form of a small dragon, sprouting sharp dragon fangs at the fist. This weapon cannot be two-handed. Renala. Remembrance of the Full Moon Queen. Remembrance of Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, hewn into the Erd Tree. In her youth, Renala was a prominent champion who charmed the Academy with her lunar magic, becoming its master. She also led the Glintstone Knights and established the House of Caria as royalty. Carian Regal Scepter. Magic Scepter of Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. The glintstone is known as a Carian Blue, enhancing full moon sorceries. Only those of the highest intelligence may wield this, the finest of all glintstone staves. Renala's Full Moon. Sorcery associated with the Carian Queen. Uses the caster as a vessel to incarnate a full moon, then sends it floating toward foes. The full moon dispels all sorcery that touches it, and temporarily reduces magic damage negation for those it strikes. Queen Renala encountered this enchanting moon when she was young, and later it would bewitch the Academy. Queen's Robe. Robe indicating the highest order of sorcerer, worn by Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, increases intelligence. When Renala, head of both the Academy of Rea Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radigan, her heart went along with him. And then those at the Academy realized that Renala was no champion after all. Radahn. Remembrance of the Star Scourge. Remembrance of Star Scourge Radahn, hewn into the Erd Tree. The Red Lion General wielded gravitational powers, which he learned in Celia during his younger days. All so he would never have to abandon his beloved but scrawny steed. Star Scourge Greatsword. Curved greatswords of black steel wielded by General Radahn. A pair of weapons decorated with a lion mane motif. Radahn earned considerable renown as the Star Scourge in his youth, and it is said that it was during this time he engraved the gravity crest upon these blades. Lion Greatbow. Greatbow of black iron, wielded by General Radahn, decorated with a lion mane motif. Imbued with gravitational power of the Star Scourge, when used along with Radahn's spear, it becomes a true weapon of a champion. Radahn's red mane helm. Helm of the Golden Lion, with flowing red hair, worn by General Radahn. Radahn inherited the furious, flaming red hair of his father Radigan, and is fond of its heroic implications. I was born a champion's cub. Now I am the lord of the battlefield's lion. Radahn's lion armor. Armor depicting the Golden Lion, worn by General Radahn. The Golden Lion is said to symbolize Godfrey, the Elden Lord, and his beast regent, Serosh. From his youngest years, Radahn was naturally captivated by the Lord of the battlefield. Radahn's spear. Great arrows used by General Radahn during the Festival of Combat. These are, in fact, the many spears with which he was stabbed by the clean-wrought knights, imbued with Radahn's gravitational power. Regal Ancestor Spirit. Remembrance of the Regal Ancestor. Remembrance of the Regal Ancestor Spirit, hewn into the Erd Tree. Ancestral spirits exist as a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Erd Tree. Life sprouts from death, as it does from birth. Such is the way of the living. Winged Great Horn. Distinctive horns suffused with the power of ancestral spirits. This large, wing-shaped specimen is wielded as a weapon of spirit worship. In the ancestral spirit-worshipping faith, these are considered envoys' wings, made to reap the lives of beings which experience no sprouting. Ancestral spirit's horn, item cut from the horns of the regal ancestor spirit. Restore FP upon defeating enemies. A number of new growths bud from the antler-like horns of the fallen king, each glowing with light. Thus does new life grow from death, and from death one obtains power. Morgoth. Remembrance of the Omen King. Remembrance of Morgoth, the Omen King, hewn into the Erd Tree. Though born one of the graceless Omen, Morgoth took it upon himself to become the Erd Tree's protector. He loved not in return, for he was never loved, but nevertheless, love it he did. Morgoth's cursed sword, warped blade of shifting hue, used by Morgoth, the Omen King. The accursed blood that Morgoth recanted and sealed away, reformed into this blade. Regal Omen Bairn. Doll of a curse-born bairn from the Erd Tree's royal line, uses FP to unleash many wraiths that chase down foes. Omen babies born of royalty do not have their horns excised, but instead are kept underground, unbeknownst to anyone, imprisoned for eternity. These memorial fetishes are fashioned in secret. Fell Omen Cloak. A cloak of ragged fur, worn about the exposed body of Margit, the fell Omen. Having slaughtered countless champions during the Shattering, the fell Omen has become a horror to those who harbor ambitions for the Erd Tree or for lordship. Rykard. Remembrance of the Blasphemous. Remembrance of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, hewn into the Erd Tree. Rykard took the form of a giant serpent, that he might devour, grow, and live eternally. I understand. The road of blasphemy is long and perilous. One cannot walk it unprepared to sin. Rykard's Rancor. The terrible power of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, summons searing spirits that leave a trail of delayed explosions in their wake. These spirits manifest from the rancor of heroes who met a violent end. The Lord granted them an audience, whereupon they were welcomed by the maw of the great serpent, and within the serpent's bowels they became the Lord's kin. Blasphemous blade, sacred sword of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. Remains of the countless heroes he has devoured writhe upon the surface of this blade, and now they share the same blood, bound together as family. Some HP is restored upon defeating an enemy. Melania. Remembrance of the Rot Goddess. Remembrance of Melania, Goddess of Rot, hewn into the Erd Tree. Mikola and Melania are both the children of a single god. As such, they are both Empyreans, but suffered afflictions from birth. One was cursed with eternal childhood, and the other harbored rot within. Scarlet Aeonia, technique of Melania, the goddess of rot, creates a gigantic flower that blooms into an explosion of scarlet rot. Each time the scarlet flower blooms, Melania's rot advances. It has bloomed twice already. With the third bloom, she will become a true goddess. Hand of Melania. Blade built into Melania's prosthetic arm. Through consecration, it is resistant to rot. Melania's war prosthesis symbolized her victories. Some claim to have seen wings when the weapon was raised aloft. Wings of fierce determination that have never known defeat. Melania's winged helm. Winged helm made of unalloyed gold, worn by Melania, blade of Mikola. Melania awaited Mikola at the foot of the husk. My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all. Estelle. Remembrance of the natural born. Remembrance of Estelle, natural born of the void, hewn into the Erd tree. A malformed star born in the flightless void far away, once destroyed an eternal city and took away their sky, a falling star of ill omen. Bastards, stars. Flail which deals magic damage, having been imbued with power by the remembrance of Estelle. Formed of the same many-colored star debris that comprised the form of the natural born of the void. Horalu. Remembrance of Horalu. Remembrance of the warrior Horalu, hewn into the Erd tree. When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was robbed of his grace, becoming tarnished, he took with him his kinfolk, and left the lands between. After the long march of the tarnished came to an end, Godfrey divested himself of kingship, becoming a simple warrior once more. Axe of Godfrey. Weapon of Godfrey, Elden Lord. It was broken in a battle fought as leader of the tarnished during the Long March. This weapon is symbolic of Godfrey's vow to conduct himself as a lord, later becoming an emblem of the golden lineage. In the days of the past, a crown was warranted with strength. Elden Lord Crown. Crown of Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. The age of the Erd Tree began amongst conflict, when Godfrey was lord of the battlefield. He led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone. And then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell. And it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. Malekith. Remembrance of the Black Blade. Remembrance of Malekith, the Black Blade, hewn into the Erd Tree. Malekith was a shadow-bound beast, given to his Empyrean. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away destined death. Even then, she betrayed him. Malekith's Black Blade. Malekith's Black Blade, which once harbored the power of the Rune of Death, a sad shadow of its former glory. After a fragment of death was stolen on that fateful night, Malekith bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might ever rob death again. Black Blade. Power gleaned from the remembrance of Malekith. Caster creates an illusory black blade, then leaps forward to deliver a spinning slash that emits a wave of light. This can be followed up with one additional attack. This blade was once imbued with destined death. In addition to dealing damage, it reduces foes' maximum HP and continues to sap their current HP for a very short time. Malekith's Helm. Beast's helm made of black iron and decorated with gold, worn by Malekith the Black Blade. Malekith, Queen Marika's loyal half-brother, bore a blade imbued with destined death, and there was not one demigod who did not fear him. Champions knew what was at stake. Indeed, that is what made them champions. Fire Giant. Remembrance of the Fire Giant. Remembrance of Fire Giant, hewn into the Erd Tree. The Fire Giant is a survivor of the war against the giants. Upon realizing the flames of their forge would never die, Queen Marika marked him with a curse. "O trifling giant, mayst thou tend thy flame for eternity." Giant's red braid, hefty whip woven from the flame-red hair of a fire giant. Every giant is red of hair, and Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind. Burn, O flame. One of the incantations that draws directly from the power of the fire giants, raises a series of flame pillars around the caster. Charging further increases the number of flame pillars. The fire giants borrowed from the power of a fell god, and still they were defeated. Yet their failure released them from their solitary curse, to serve as keepers of the flame for eternity. Dragon Lord Placidusax. Remembrance of the Dragon Lord. Remembrance of Dragon Lord Placidusax, hewn into the Erd Tree. The Dragon Lord whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time is said to have been Elden Lord in the age before the Erd Tree. Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return. Dragon King's Crag Blade. Piercing gravel stone sword, containing primeval lightning. A portion of the Dragon Lord's power gained from a remembrance. This weapon commands great power over the paltry, mortal dragons of today. Placidusax's Ruin. Power gleaned from the remembrance of Dragon Lord Placidusax. Transforms caster into the Dragon Lord to spew golden breath from above. This incantation can be cast while jumping. These are the dying wails of the Dragon Lord, who once dwelled eternal beyond time. Lich Dragon Fortisax. Remembrance of the Lich Dragon. Remembrance of Lich Dragon Fortisax, hewn into the Erd Tree. After Godwyn the Golden became the Prince of Death, the ancient dragon fought long and hard against the death within its companion. Alas, victory was never achieved, and its only reward was corruption. Fortisax's Lightning Spear. Incantation that channels the power of the ancient dragon Fortisax. Creates 2 spears of red lightning and stabs them into the ground from above, one after another. On impact, each spear will burst into trails of lightning covering the area. During the War of the Ancient Dragons, these twin red lightning stakes were the hallmark of the ancient dragon who was once called the mightiest boulder stone. Death Lightning. Incantation that channels the power of the ancient dragon Fortisax, now corrupted by death. Strikes surroundings with a storm of death lightning, inflicts death blight upon foes. Charging extends duration of the storm. It is said that this golden lightning was wielded by Godwyn, who befriended Fortisax. Moog. Remembrance of the Blood Lord. Remembrance of Moog, Lord of Blood, hewn into the Erd Tree. Wishing to raise Mikla to full godhood, Moog wished to become his consort, taking the role of monarch. But no matter how much of his bloody bedchamber he tried to share, he received no response from the young Empyrean. Mogwyn's sacred spear. Trident of Moog, Lord of Blood, a sacred spear that will come to symbolize his dynasty. As well as serving as a weapon, it is an instrument of communion with an outer god who bestows powers upon accursed blood. The Mother of Truth desires a wound. Blood Boon, sacred incantation of Moog, Lord of Blood. Thrust arm into the body of the formless mother, then scatter the blood flame to set the area ablaze. This incantation can be cast while in motion. The Mother of Truth craves wounds. When Moog stood before her, deep underground, his accursed blood erupted with fire and besotted with the defilement that he was born into. Lord of Blood's robe, attire of Moog, Lord of Blood, embroidered with an extravagant gold emblem on black cloth. The dress of a luminary, the reigning lord and hierarch of the coming dynasty of Mogwyn, or perhaps of a raving lunatic. Elden Beast. Elden Remembrance. Remembrance of the Elden Beast, hewn into the Erdtree. It was the vassal beast of the greater will and living incarnation of the concept of order. Marika's Hammer. Stone hammer made in the lands of the Newman, outside the lands between. The tool with which Queen Marika shattered the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it. The hammer partially broke upon shattering the ring, becoming splintered with rune fragments. Sacred relic sword. Sword wrought from the remains of a god who should have lived a life eternal. Thoughts on what the weapon portends are many and varied. Some consider it the mark of a great sin, or a sign of great devastation. Some think of it as the end of an age, while others the beginning. And that does it for the base game. So now we're going to move on to the Remembrance Bosses of the DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. And we'll start with Gaius. Remembrance of the Wild Boar Rider. Remembrance of Commander Gaius, hewn into the Shadow Tree. Both were as elder brothers to the lion, and both were cursed from birth. In spite of, or perhaps because of this very reason, Gaius was both Mesmer's friend and the leader of his men. Sword Lance. Weapon once wielded by Commander Gaius, a combination of great sword and lance, weighty and capable of being brought to bear with great force. This armament shows its true potential when used astride a mount. Gaius himself was never without his boar. Blades of Stone. Gravity-manipulating sorcery of Commander Gaius. Pulls blade-like clumps of rock from the earth, charged to form 3 successive clumps. Gaius and Radon were good rivals in their youth, and this sorcery is a product of their friendly competition. Gaius's Helm. The black iron helm of Commander Gaius, part of an armor set patterned after fallen seeds. Gaius was the most senior disciple of the same Alabaster Lord, who taught Radon and Gaia gravitational technique. Gaius's Greaves. Black iron greaves made for Commander Gaius. A cruel joke, for he could not wear them. Riding atop the boar, he called his other half. Gaius was in fact a warrior of albinoric extraction. Mesmer, you know what? I haven't really been offering commentary, but I do want to pop in real quick and just ask, who is Gaia? From Gaius's armor, it says, Gaius was the most senior disciple of the same Alabaster Lord who taught Radon and Gaia gravitational technique. They're not mentioned anywhere else in the game. Gaia is the feminine form of the name Gaius, so perhaps it is, I don't know, a sister? I also thought it maybe could be his boar. You know, if his boar was smart enough to learn gravitational magic, which I don't, I have no idea, but, yeah. There's the albinoric archer woman that we find at the albinoric shack. She could be Gaius' sister, maybe. Although she doesn't use gravity magic, so it wouldn't really make sense for her to have been taught by the Alabaster Lord. There's also Redmane Knight Oga, who studied gravity magic alongside Radon, but obviously Oga is not the same name as Gaia, so unless there's some, something going on there with like a nickname or whatever, it seems unlikely to be that person. So, I don't know the answer, but it's funny. This one spot in the game where this name is mentioned. Anyway, let's move on. Mesmer, Remembrance of the Impaler. Remembrance of Mesmer the Impaler, hewn into the shadow tree. A malevolent snake writhed within Mesmer, and so his very mother plucked out his eye and put in its place a seal of grace. Yet having done so, her fear compelled her to secrete away her child within the realm of shadow. Hidden away, keeping company with the original sin, and a hatred that would not be confined. Spear of the Impaler, weapon of Mesmer the Impaler, a great spear with a warped blade in the shape of undulating flame. Remade by the forging arts of the realm of shadow, this weapon can be thrown by executing a strong attack, dashing strong attack, or mounted strong attack. Charge the attack to produce flame on impact. Mesmer's Orb, an incantation of Mesmer the Impaler, summons Mesmer's flame to form a giant floating orb. The orb soars toward a foe, crashes into the earth, and explodes after a brief delay. Charging enhances potency. Mesmer despised his own fire. Time and time again he hoped to rid himself of it, but ever did it burn. Mesmer's Helm, black helm of Mesmer the Impaler, crowned with two intertwined winged serpents, slightly enhances incantations of Mesmer's flame, as well as Fire Knight skills. The winged snakes were Mesmer's constant companions. They were there when the base serpent was sealed away behind his eye. They were there through his eternity of suffering. They will accompany him yet in his hideous new form, born when he destroyed the grace granted by his mother. They have accepted his fate as much as he. Mesmer's Armor, black armor of Mesmer the Impaler, draped with a red cloak, bearing his crest embroidered. On his mother's wishes, Mesmer made himself a symbol of fear, undertaking the cleansing crusade she desired. Direct thy maledictions, thine ire, and thy grief towards me alone. Meter, Remembrance of the Mother of Fingers. Remembrance of Meter, the Mother of Fingers, hewn into the shadow tree. The mother of all 2 fingers and finger creepers was in turn a magnificently gleaming daughter of the greater will, and the first shooting star to fall upon the lands between. Staff of the great beyond, staff fashioned from the tail fingers of Meter, the mother of fingers, and the microcosm raised aloft over the crux they form. Catalyst for casting both sorceries and incantations, the mother received signs from the greater will, from the beyond of the microcosm. Despite being broken and abandoned, she kept waiting for another message to come. Gazing finger, the head of Meter, the finger mother, wielded as a weapon without modification. From within the center of the fingerprint that wrinkles the creature's foremost protrusion, a tiny, wart-like eye gazes vacantly into the beyond. Midra, remembrance of the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Remembrance of Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame, hewn into the shadow tree. As the golden barbs inflicted eternal agony upon him, Midra held fast to Nanaya's entreaty. Endure. The word was a curse. Greatsword of Damnation. Golden greatsword that once pierced the body of Midra, master of the manse, used by the Hornsent in the execution of a damnation like no other. The barbs that pierced the victim from within wind gently around the blade. Midra's Flame of Frenzy. Incantation in praise of Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame. Summons an apparition of the Lord's head to spew frenzied flame. This incantation can be used while in motion. The apparition will remain for as long as the input is held. The Lord of Frenzied Flame shall take their torment, despair, their affliction, every sin, every curse, all melted away. Yet Midra, like others before him, was too weak to become a lord. Romina, remembrance of the Saint of the Bud. Remembrance of Romina, Saint of the Bud, hewn into the shadow tree. After the church was burned to the ground, Romina discovered a twisted divine element, which she weaved into the baleful scarlet wrought. Perhaps then the buds might find somewhere to gain purchase once more within the scorched remains. Pole blade of the bud, weapon of Romina, saint of the bud. The scarlet glaive with a dangling, bud-like blade. Attacks cause buildup of rot. Once, in the crumbling, burning church, Romina held the bud in speechless silence. That bud would become her blade. Rotten butterflies. Incantation used by Romina, saint of the bud. Summons a myriad of butterflies while performing a gentle twirl. The butterflies break apart on contact, scattering rot and setting off a chain reaction. The scarlet butterflies are as the goddess of rot's wings. Bereft of a master, they were soothed by Romina, who reached out to them. Shadow Tree Avatar. Remembrance of the Shadow Sunflower. Remembrance of the Shadow Tree Avatar, hewn into the Shadow Tree. The Shadow Tree is the shadow of the Earth Tree, born of dark notions that bear no sense of order, that twist and bend is its stalk, rendering it brittle. Shadow Sunflower Blossom. The head of a monstrous shadow sunflower manifestation of the Shadow Tree. Then again, it might just be a flower, wielded as a weapon. Much like the Shadow Tree itself, in appearance, a second stalk winds tightly around the first, just as if in a tender embrace. Land of Shadow, incantation originating from Shadow Tree avatars, creates a hail of golden projectiles which are fired toward foes after a brief delay. This incantation channels the force of the Shadow Tree's power, and its gold is accompanied by shadow. Putrescent Night. Remembrance of putrescence. Remembrance of the putrescent night, hewn into the Shadow Tree. All tainted flesh eventually becomes putrescence, and this clump of it imbibed Saint Trina's nectar, which granted it eternal rest. And so it was that putrescence became her night. Putrescence Cleaver, weapon wielded by the putrescent knight, a great cleaver of hardened putrescence affixed to an arch fashioned from human bones, gains power from the wielder's arcane attribute. Vortex of Putrescence, sorcery used by the putrescent knight, launches a whirl of putrescent jets that bathe the surroundings of all they touch in ghost flame. In an age long past, death was burned by ghost flame. Even the remains of tainted flesh were given equal treatment in death. Rolana, remembrance of the Twin Moon Night. Remembrance of Rolana, the Twin Moon Night, hewn into the Shadow Tree. Once a Carian princess, Rolana disavowed her birthright and chose to stand at Mesmer's side instead, knowing full well that not even the brilliance of the moon could grant him succor. Before long, she became known as the Sword of Mesmer. Rolana's twin blades, Carian light greatsword embedded with blue glintstone, weapon of Rolana, the Twin Moon Knight. 2 swords as a single armament. When two-handing, a straight sword engraved with golden flame will be carried in the left hand. Here, and here alone, were moon and fire ever together. Rolana's Twin Moons, sorcery of Rolana, the Twin Moon Knight, associated with the Carian princess. Incarnate overlapping twin moons, which strike the ground one after the other, violently shaking the earth with moonlight. In her childhood, she and her elder sister Renala met these moons, overlapping as though nestled against one another. Rolana's Helm, ornate helm of Rolana, the Twin Moon Knight, fashioned from silver steel. Renala, head of the royal family of Caria, was said to have given her younger sister, who renounced her lineage to chase after Mesmer, a gift of lustrous black hair. Rolana's armor, ornate armor of Rolana, the Twin Moon Knight, fashioned from silver steel, adorned with a lapis lazuli blue that is symbolic of Caria. Its radiance is yet to fully fade. Rolana's gloves, gloves of Rolana, the Twin Moon Knight, fashioned from quality leather. Rolana's greaves, ornate greaves of Rolana, the Twin Moon Knight, fashioned from silver steel. Dancing Lion, remembrance of the Dancing Lion, remembrance of the Dancing Lion, hewn into the Shadow Tree. When the Impaler's army assailed the tower, the ritual of the lion dance was turned toward martial ends. Its divinity, its fury, its light-footed beauty. Enraged divine beast, a charm depicting the crazed, cavorting dance of the divine beast, conducted at the Tower Festival, raises potency of storms. Divine beasts are messengers of the heavens, and their rage mirrors the tumult of the skies, of which storms are the pinnacle. Radon and Mikola, remembrance of a god and a lord, remembrance of Radahn, consort of Miquella, hewn into the shadow tree. In their childhood, Miquella saw in Radahn a lord, his strength and his kindness, that stood in stark contrast with their afflicted selves. And so Miquella made his heartfelt wish that Radahn would one day be his king consort. Great sword of Radahn. Great swords of black steel wielded by Radahn in his youth, a pair of weapons decorated with a lion mane motif. These were in his possession immediately before his triumph over the stars, the swords of a lord who does not rely on physical strength and gravity alone. Light of Miquella. The strength of Miquella upon his deific return, wielded as an incantation, annihilates foes with a pillar of light. Miquella sought to accept all that was and would be, but found one that refused to be embraced. No wonder, as one god and one king consort is all the world needs. Young Lion's Helm. The golden helm worn by Radahn in his younger years, proudly displaying his heroic red hair. It is fitting attire for a lion. When Melania, blade of Miquella, let the wrought flower blossom in Enia, Radahn heard a murmur in his ear. "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort." And that is the end of our exploration of Elden Ring boss lore today. We went through all the remembrances and the remembrance items and the armor and weapons of the bosses. So, it's not a comprehensive lore dive into every character, but I hope that you learned something new, or found something interesting, or at least got a little relaxed. Until next time, my friends, please take care of yourselves. Goodbye. Goodbye.